IDERA SharePoint Audit enhances the native auditing capabilities in SharePoint with expanded audit coverage, incorporating reports and alerting. Not only can you audit native SharePoint events, but also expand on them by including security events, logins, deletes, views, and field change information. One of the first steps in configuring SharePoint Audit is to create a repository database. This is important for two main reasons. The first is to store the audit data. This means it's kept separate from your content databases, meaning it's much more efficient. And the second is security. By installing the database on a server away from your SharePoint farm, you can add an additional layer of security to further minimize insider threats. Next, we can configure what audit data is collected. This is a farm-wide setting, and from here we can decide if we want those settings to be filtered down to every new site collection, or if we want site admins to have the flexibility and control over the data they gather on a site collection level. So we can choose to gather all of the event types or just one specific to our requirements, as well as excluding service accounts we don't need to audit, extending the log access to individual items, which enables site users to see audit data, and we'll look at that towards the end of the demo, and finally allow the audit settings to be overwritten, meaning we can change them at lower levels to dictate how that information is gathered. Here we can see that for each web application in our farm, we can, where the settings are allowed, modify the audit settings individually. We can make a selection based on the web app we want to manage, which by default will inherit settings from the farm audit we just looked at, and then make refinements based on multiple collection requirements, meaning we're very efficient when it comes to collecting and storing the data. For added security and complete coverage, we can identify where gaps appear in our auditing plans. We can choose the web app we want to investigate, and when we hit the View Results button, we can see that audit types have been disabled, something as a security admin we may need to be aware of. Within SharePoint Audit, we can choose to alert based on events that we capture during the audit process. We can build an alert definition to monitor certain events, even filter them down to individual objects in a scope and specific users we need to monitor. Once created, we'll receive an email telling us when the rule has been breached, and even track how often the alert has been generated over time by viewing the alert logs. Here we're looking at a simple example to identify when a certain user checks documents out of a specific library. When the audit sees this, it will send us an email alert and also log it to the system so that we have a reference for the future. So, looking at the View Alert logs will help us identify any occurrence of security issues. Here we can select the definition we want to track, a time period, any refinement options in the filter, and click to view the results. This provides an audit trail of how often the rule has been activated and who has been made aware of that fact. As the site collection admin, we can modify settings, view the logs, and run some pre-built reports. When looking at the site collection audit settings, we can apply the lowest level of granular collection, dictating whether we want to inherit the settings from the web app or choose individual levels for audit data. There's the option to view information about the audit log files, where we can build some custom reports showing granular information based on specific sites, events, and based on a time frame that we can supply. And finally, we can run pre-built reports giving us immediate access to information such as who's been logging in and out, who's been viewing and deleting content, who's been modifying content, and a generic security overview. We can even drill into each activity for a breakdown of all the detail involved. As we can see here, a user has been granted elevated permissions, something we may need to keep an eye on. Earlier, we made reference to the audit log access for all site users. This lets us give the end user of the data we're looking at the ability to see an audit trail for the documents individually or library-wide. With this data, or for any of the reports we generate in audit, we can export the results to Excel, which allows a referential copy to be saved and the ability to utilize further filtering and internal management information and branding options. For additional information, please head to www.idera.com and look out for other training videos in our virtual education series.